scared to admit a big piece of your identity, something big that you knew was true deep down in your soul? As a member of the LGBTQ community in Weatherford, I have. I've been really lucky to have an accepting, immediate family. My mom raised me with as many gender-neutral things as possible, like not saying that cars and trucks were for boys and allowing me to find my identity myself, even if it was the most stereotypically girly identity possible for a while. My grandma was lesbian, married to a woman, and their relationship was never treated like it was different. They attended a church full of LGBTQ people in relationships, some at various stages of transitioning, and it was never treated like anything different either. But when I was about 11 or 12 and had settled on identifying as bi, I was still scared to come out of the closet. I knew I wouldn't be thrown out or shamed into hiding, but it still came with fear. One that was really hard to place and I couldn't even put words to until a few years later after I came out when the movie Love, Simon was released. In the movie, he talks about how he has a family that's loving and as accepting as can get. He knows they'd be fine with it, but he still just can't do it. That movie meant a lot to me, and honestly still does, because it was the first time I saw someone like me, only in the closet because of the way society treats being gay as different and straight as the default. When I came out, I really only came out to my immediate family and friends due to extended family not accepting me. And even at that age, I knew the world around me didn't accept me. This was proven to me on multiple different occasions. In 2018, my stepdad took me to Fort Worth Pride. We'd been to Dallas Pride the month before, which had been my very first Pride, and had thankfully gone smoothly, but Fort Worth wasn't as lucky. As we waited on the parade route for the parade to start, a small group of protesters showed up with megaphones and began to say we were all going to hell. Gay sex was sinful. I remember them using overly graphic language to describe gay sex and how sinful and against God it was. If this had ended here, Fort Worth Pride would have ended for me as a horrible memory. Thankfully, my stepdad had been raised Anglican, so when the pastor began to yell Bible verses of condemnation, my stepdad was able to yell his own verses back to shut him down. Because of that, I remember this Pride fondly, as a moment where my stepdad was the hero, but also as a near miss. I also have the memory of the time my great-grandma was coming down the hallway with two of my cousins, when one cousin looked at me and said, "Sophia looks a lot like Grace right now." And the other cousin agreed. Grace was my grandma, mentioned earlier, who was a lesbian, but a key point here, she and I were not biologically related. They were saying, or heavily implying, that I didn't look straight, or at least that's how I take it. Before I even realized what they said, my great-grandma, who never accepted my grandma's sexuality, immediately said, "I don't see it," in a firm way that clearly shut things down and allowed no room for discussion. I typically never came out to my great-grandma because even before this incident, I knew she wouldn't accept me, and it wasn't worth the fight. These are just a few incidents. I unfortunately have more, and nearly every LGBTQ person has at least one. This fear wasn't just something I felt. It impacted my family as well. When my stepdad and I went to Dallas Pride, we stopped at our favorite restaurant in town to get sodas on the way home. But before we went inside, he stopped me and said, after a day full of pride and happiness, that we should take off our beads and leave them in the car because he didn't want someone to harass us. There were also many occasions over the years when my mom suggested I not wear pride shirts or merch out because while she loved and accepted me, she was worried I'd get harassed for it. Things came to a head in 2022 when my great-grandma passed away. I had graduated and turned 18 the year before, and at that point, we were only still here because we were helping take care of her. We had been feeling more isolated and alone over the years, being in Texas, so without a major reason to stay, we began to look into leaving Texas entirely. The only reason we stayed was because I found local, active allies in place. They helped me realize I wasn't alone. I didn't need to hide myself. I could be proud. I finally felt safe, and this feeling didn't just impact me. As I felt safer and was able to prove that we weren't alone, my mom began to feel safer too. Just 4 years ago, she never would have worn a pride shirt out, and she most likely wouldn't have wanted me to either. Now she wears pride shirts just as often or more than I do. We have a pride themed yard sign we had out until the stakes got messed up. And we have pride stickers to go on the car when we eventually remember to put them on. Going back to the movie I mentioned earlier, there's a scene where Simon and his mom are talking about if she knew. And she mentioned the last few years when he'd been in the closet. She knew he had a secret, and she could almost feel him holding his breath. But now that he's out, he can finally release that breath. To quote the movie, "You get to exhale now, Simon. You get to be more you than you have been in a very long time. You deserve everything you want." And even now, 7 years after that movie released, and 3 years into being fully out myself, the scene still brings me to tears because it truly describes how I felt, finally feeling safe enough to be my true self. You don't have to do anything major. Add a pride shirt to your usual shirt rotation, start wearing a pronoun pin or something that signifies you're an ally, or put a pride sticker on your car. It's really that simple. I understand it might be scary at first, but I promise you, it will help more than you may think.